The night before our wedding, my husband suddenly confessed to me. He said he was a reincarnated soul. In his previous life, I was ruthless and obsessed with vanity. I turned the entire household upside down with my antics. Now reborn in this life, he intended to annul this marriage arrangement. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Hearing Zheng Boling say this, I was momentarily stunned. It took me a long time to regain my composure. After all, we were betrothed since childhood. He comes from a noble family, one of the 5 prestigious clans and 7 eminent lineages. His countenance is dignified, radiant as the bright moon. He is the epitome of a noble young gentleman. As for me, I am the legitimate daughter of the Minister of War. My mother passed away early, and my father has repeatedly been framed in court. A single tree cannot make a forest. Thus, this seemingly well-matched marriage is actually me marrying above my station. From a young age, I was disciplined by my family to ensure every word and action met the standards befitting a noble lady of the capital. I never neglected my studies in music, chess, calligraphy, painting, nor in virtue, speech, appearance, and needlework for a single day. All I sought was to rightfully become the matriarch of the Zheng family, leaving no room for others to find fault. Yet now, with this engagement called off so abruptly and without explanation, how am I to face this situation? What's more, it was for such an absurd reason. Yet the man before me spoke with such earnestness. He raised his eyes and recounted, word by word, all that had transpired in his past life. He told of how I had married into the Zheng family and how I had won the approval of Zheng's mother. After marriage, they also spent 2 or 3 years supporting each other through thick and thin. Later, his true nature gradually came to light. He was ruthless and stopped at no evil. Not only did she forbid him from taking concubines, but she also stirred up constant turmoil in the entire household. At times, they even meddled in court affairs, reducing the Zheng family to a laughingstock in the capital. Several times, they placed him in situations of disloyalty and filial impiety. Now that I've been given a second chance, the man raised his eyes, their depths inscrutable. How could I possibly choose you again? I could only laugh. A completely fabricated matter was actually presented by him with such conviction. How utterly shameless. As for the reasons behind this, I see them clearly. It's simply because they think our Chen family is declining in influence and no longer matches the high status of their Zheng family. Fearing public criticism, they concocted this so-called rebirth story. So I didn't hold back and went straight to the point. What rebirth and reincarnation nonsense? Do you take people for 3-year-old children? If you truly feel this arranged marriage is unfair to you, just say it outright. That would at least show you're being straightforward. Rest assured, our Chen family isn't unreasonable. I'm not that desperate for you either. I straightened my sleeves and looked at him coldly. The man's eyes flickered slightly. Just as I turned to leave, he suddenly grabbed my sleeve. You don't believe me? Ridiculous. How can I possibly believe you about such an absurd matter? I couldn't help but retort, lifting my gaze. The moment our eyes met, I saw his gaze darken as he coldly uttered, Chen Yian. I was stunned. This was the childhood name my mother once gave me. Later, when my mother passed away, her death extinguished like a lamp, and this name became taboo. No one ever called it out again. One could say, apart from those closest to me, no one else could possibly know. How could he? Could it be? I stared at him in disbelief, seemingly noticing the shift in my attitude. The man slowed his speech even further. In the 7th year of Yongning, you secretly tasted the Osmanthus candy on the ancestral altar and cut your right wrist on a shard of porcelain. I instinctively clenched my right wrist, the scar beneath my sleeve burning faintly. That was a secret from when I was 7 years old, unknown even to my personal maid. The year you turned 9, your father elevated the concubine to wife. You knelt alone before your mother's grave for an entire night. He spoke those words slowly and cruelly, one by one, recounting that past that belonged solely to me. All of this, you told me these things yourself in our past life. For some reason, through these words, I seemed to catch a glimpse of a version of myself that existed in the same time and space yet was entirely different. She was ruthless and obsessed with vanity, clearly out of their league, yet they failed to cherish it. They personally brought about an irreversible outcome. In the end, the man, reborn into a new life, sentenced her across different timelines to death, and, he raised his hand, pointing at my chest, your right breast, there's a lotus-shaped birthmark. When the man spoke these words, his voice was like jade soaked in well water, chilling to the bone. I was stunned. Chen Zhaoxue, I've told you, in this lifetime, I will never marry you no matter what. Our fate ends here. Even after returning to the mansion, the man's words still echoed in my ears. Sunlight streamed through the carved prism, falling upon the hem of my skirt. I knelt before the ancestral hall, staring at my mother's memorial tablet, lost in thought for a long time. Her final words surfaced in my mind. By then, Mother was already terminally ill, holding my hand, her sunken eyes holding on to their last glimmer of light. She said, "My health is failing, and your father is no better. This marriage arrangement is my final plan for you. Our Yian must be dignified and virtuous. Once you marry into the Zheng family, I'll have no regrets left in this life." Every word is written in blood. Until her dying breath, she believed that as long as I maintained impeccable virtue, speech and conduct, and endured until the coming-of-age ceremony, endured until the 3 letters and 6 rites, she could endure her way to securing a brilliant future for me. I always thought the same way. That's why I've lived these years with such caution, planning every step carefully, not a single day of peace. To secure this marriage, how much gold and silver my father sent to the Zheng household. Everyone is waiting for me to marry into the Zheng family, husband and wife in a past life, rebirth, a second chance at life. Despite all my efforts, I was still rejected for such a baseless reason. How am I supposed to explain this? Things indeed unfolded as I had anticipated. The moment the letter of annulment was delivered to our home, my father kicked open the door to my chamber. "You disgrace!" He slammed the table in fury. How could I have raised such a shameless daughter? Before I could utter a word, he raised his hand and struck me across the face. A crisp slap rang out, a searing pain. Even though it was the Zheng family who went back on their word regarding the marriage agreement, why did father have to hit me? I couldn't help but argue. Even now, you still refuse to admit it." His hand trembled as he pointed his index finger between my brows. "Do you know what the Zheng family said when they came to break off the engagement today?" As he spoke, he gritted his teeth and threw the letter of annulment in his hand toward me. On the white paper, the words "moral deficiency" were glaringly written in bold characters. He said, "If our Chen family refuses to acknowledge this accusation, he will make sure everyone knows about the birthmark on your chest. Even if the Zheng family is at fault, now to protect your innocence, they can only admit to this charge." Chen Zhaoxue, how could I have given birth to such a shameless daughter? The man's eyes burned with venom, as if he wished for me to atone with my life. I froze in place, the taste of blood spread across his lips. Unbelievable. Zheng Bowling. Oh Zheng Bowling, you truly despise me to the core. A woman's reputation is a noose around her neck, yet you insist on using it as leverage to break off the engagement. Turn the memories of past lives into the blades that flay me in this one. Only now do I understand. So the so-called no connection he mentioned was to personally watch me fall into the abyss. Never again could she taint this noble gentleman. Pure as the breeze and bright as the moon. "Speak up." Father's voice grew louder. "If you hadn't lost your chastity before marriage, how could he have known about these things?" For a moment, countless words of defense flashed through my mind, but my lips parted and closed, yet not a single word could I utter. It's hard to explain. Whether it was done or not no longer matters. It can be said that even if I were to fight to the bitter end, it wouldn't have the slightest impact on the Zheng family's reputation. Just the accusation of impurity alone is enough to forever brand me with shame. This is the discipline imposed on women in this era. I cannot win the fight. Misfortunes in this world always come in pairs. After the engagement was broken off, I suddenly fell seriously ill. I curled up on the bed, my ears buzzing incessantly, the high fever scorching my temples. Yet even so, it seemed the heavens still wouldn't spare me. In a daze, I heard the whispers outside the window, that Jinx, getting her engagement broken off before even entering the marriage. How are we, the Chen family, supposed to maintain our standing in the capital now? If I'd known she'd be so shameless, she should have followed her short-lived mother to the grave. It was the voice of the concubine. Father remained silent, letting those venomous words slither in through the door crack. I curled up under the quilt, trembling uncontrollably. The door was pushed open, and in my daze, someone wiped my forehead with a handkerchief. My dear girl, it was the maid, Chundao. She sat by my bedside, her voice trembling with tears. "Tell me, how did a perfectly healthy body suddenly become like this?" Tears scalding hot fell onto the back of my hand. Witnessing this scene, the pity in my heart grew even deeper. I couldn't understand, even bystanders couldn't help but shed tears of sympathy for me. Yet why? Why did the father who raised me since childhood and that so-called husband from my past life, with whom I shared over a decade of marital bonds, have the heart to hurt me so deeply? The pain is beyond words. The quarreling outside continues. if you ask me. She should quickly marry some down-and-out family. The concubine lowered her voice. Squire Wang from the west of the city sent word the other day, saying he's willing to offer 300 taels as betrothal gifts. A sudden surge of metallic sweetness rose in my throat. I know this man. He was a merchant over 50 years old who had taken 13 concubines. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. So in the eyes of the world, a woman who had been rejected in marriage was like a piece of rotten meat, fair game for anyone to take a bite. Their impatience was palpable, and the very next day, my father personally summoned the matchmaker to our home, as the beaded curtain was lifted. A heavy wave of perfumed powder wafted through the air. The woman covered her mouth and nose with a handkerchief. Upon seeing my face, she froze for a moment, then scrutinized my fever-ridden body from head to toe. Oh dear, reeking of sickness like this. She took half a step back, if you ask me. Before the fever clouds her mind completely, hurry and send her to the butcher Lee in the outskirts. Even as a second wife, at least she could fetch something in return. No, how dare you? I propped myself up on the edge of the bed. No matter what, I'm still Chen. But before I could finish, my stepmother interrupted from the side. Chen, what? After doing such a thing, aren't you ashamed enough already? Do you know what people are saying out there now? You offered yourself shamelessly to share his bed. How dare you even mention the Chen family name? The room fell silent at once. After a long while, father finally spoke from the side. If you absolutely refuse this marriage, then tomorrow you shall be sent to the Tsiyun nunnery. Consider it as if I never had this daughter. With that, he turned and left in a huff. I stared at his retreating figure in disbelief. How laughable that 16 years of father-daughter affection could be undone by a few idle words from outsiders. The twilight deepened. Following the faint moonlight, I felt for the golden hairpin beneath my pillow, a cold touch transmitted from my fingertips. As hatred surged in my chest, at this moment, a thought suddenly flashed through my mind, a crazy, vicious thought. I want Zheng Bowling dead. I want the entire Chen family to perish with him. I want those who harmed me to never rise again. Let them fall into the same situation as mine. Through the dim candlelight, my reflection in the bronze mirror gradually merged with that of a venomous woman. Indeed, just as he said, I was born ruthless and vengeful, never forgetting the slightest grievance. Alas, I did not get my wish, because my father arranged a marriage for me. I heard it was the other party who personally came to propose. His surname is Ji Yu, and his name is Ling Yun. He is the deputy general under Uncle Jiang's command. I know of him. The man was originally a general from the enemy country, but on the battlefield, he personally killed his own master. He defected to our country, though he turned from darkness to light. Such treacherous conduct was ultimately despised by scholars. His reputation was quite tarnished, yet in the eyes of outsiders, we were a perfect match. A disloyal young general who betrayed his master for glory and a young lady of questionable virtue. What could be a more natural pair? But even for someone like him, I didn't want to drag him into my mess for no reason. So when I first met Jiyu Lingyun, I told him the truth. I told him that the real reason I was rejected wasn't because of any moral failing. It was because my betrothed was a man who had been reborn. In his words, I am ruthless and greedy for vanity. He is unwilling to repeat past mistakes. That's why he abruptly called off this engagement, and I happened to have a birthmark on my chest, which he knew from his past life memories. So he used this to threaten me. Someone like me, you'd better not mess with. Leaning on my recently recovered body, I spoke with a smile. After all, rumors have already spread. He hates me so much that if we were to actually marry, it might bring trouble to you in the future. To put it bluntly, I paused slightly, my gaze falling on the sword at his waist. If what he says is true, a venomous woman like me, with a heart as poisonous as a snake's, would hardly be a good match for anyone. You'd better find someone else. Faced with my frank words, the man merely smiled. He stared at me intently, then shook his head. I don't think so. You can't even take care of yourself right now, yet you're still thinking about not burdening others. How could someone with such thoughts ever become ruthless? I froze for a moment, then laughed and defended. What if his nature changes in the future? After all, he did reveal many of my private, deeply hidden secrets. He truly must have been reborn, so, who knows? I might undergo a drastic change in temperament someday. You'd better not gamble. I remained standing straight, quietly and slowly awaiting his response. As if being judged, time passed minute by minute. A soft chuckle reached my ears. Matters of the future can wait until the future. He curled his lips, revealing a row of gleaming white teeth. All I know is that right now, standing before me is the young lady of the Chen family, virtuous in character and appearance, accomplished in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, a paragon of noble ladies in the capital. These were people I couldn't even reach before. I froze, a sour bitterness rising in my throat. I always thought that after breaking off the engagement, I no longer deserved such a reputation. Yet now, someone is telling me that this is exactly who I am. Even after having her engagement broken off, she remained the epitome of a refined lady, as highly praised by the court's female officials. Chen Xiaoxue was always Chen Xiaoxue. Even when covered in dust, her radiance remained undimmed, defined by no one. If this marriage truly cannot be agreed upon, it is certainly not your fault, but rather that I am unworthy of you. He raised his hand, insistently offering the marriage certificate. The man's fingertips still carried the chill of the northern frontier. Moreover, what kind of person one becomes in the future is determined by oneself. Young lady, do not belittle yourself. You are so intelligent and lovely. Why belittle yourself? My breath hitched. You truly think so? From the bottom of my heart, his eyes shimmered with emotion, carrying a pleading tone. Miss Chen, if you have no sweetheart in mind, please choose me. Though I'm not from a noble family, my household wants for nothing, and I've gained some modest reputation. As he spoke, his tone grew increasingly light-hearted. In the future, I will surely protect you and keep you safe, ensuring you live freely without suffering the slightest grievance. I swear. The young man blinked his eyes. He was quite the rascal. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. The wedding was set for the 7th day of the 7th month. Before the wedding, I had no intention of stirring up trouble. But someone just had to send an invitation. It was from the Grand Princess. As for the reason, it was simply because the flower festival was approaching, and noble ladies from the capital were invited to celebrate the occasion together. I sat beneath the corridor, lost in thought as I held this gilded invitation in my hand. Once again, it was Jiyu Lingyun who made the decision for me. He said, even shattered jade cannot alter the hues of mountains and rivers, still reflecting the light of heaven and the shadows of clouds. This is a poem you once wrote. How could someone who writes such articles with their pen be trapped in a cocoon woven by gossip? You must step out eventually. The banquet was set at the Riverside Pavilion. As I turned the corner of the winding corridor, I heard a mocking laugh. Do you think the eldest daughter of the Chen family will show up today? Stunned, the vibrant spring scenery in the garden suddenly froze. I suppose not. After all, she was just jilted, too heartbroken to think of anything else. Rumor has it this new husband is a rough-and-tumble battlefield brute. Her eyes rolled around in a circle. Miss Chen will probably have to go drink the northwest wind from now on. Another person chimed in, her gaze lightly sweeping over my plain clothes. But looking at her dull appearance, it does match the barbaric land. With that, the group burst into laughter together. Truly a banquet at Hongmen. I took a deep breath and slowly revealed myself. Upon my arrival, the gathering instantly fell silent. Some whispered among themselves, others wore mocking expressions, each with their own thoughts. Xuanyang, you've come at just the right time, the daughter of the Hanlin academician said with a smile, breaking the awkwardness. She first made a few inconsequential remarks before shifting the topic. This year's 100 Flowers scroll is still missing a main painting. In previous years, your virtue, appearance, speech, and skills have always been the best among us. This painting must be done by you. As she spoke, she had already pressed the paintbrush in her hand into mine. I naturally couldn't refuse. The wolf hair brush spreads ink across the rice paper as I hold my breath to outline the lotus pond's serene charm. A summer lotus painting springs to life on the paper. As I lift the brush to finish the final stroke, a mocking laugh sounds behind me, too obsessed with form to capture the spirit. Your technique reeks of craftsmanship. Exactly. Someone lifted the painting paper with a silk fan. The inscribed poem is rather mediocre too. Phrases like lotus leaves reaching the sky sound like vulgar street poetry. Yes, indeed. How come Miss Chen's painting skills have declined so much? Faint murmurs of disapproval could be heard. Anyone with eyes could see this was deliberate nitpicking. Behind me, Chun Dao was so anxious that her eyes turned red. She was about to argue when I stopped her. Looking up, under the magnolia tree, Zheng Bowling stood with his hands behind his back, dressed in a moon-white robe. A faint smile played at the corners of the man's lips. So that's how it is. At this moment, I finally understood the eager expressions of these noble ladies. They were currying favor with the future head of the Zheng family by trampling on me. No matter how I paint, whether well or poorly, it doesn't matter to them. What they need is merely a pledge of allegiance. That's all there is to it. Such painting skills indeed cannot be considered the best among the noble ladies of the capital. Zheng Bowling slowly approached. Why not take advantage of today to pass this title to someone more suitable? How about it? A sudden uproar erupted. Since young Master Zheng has spoken, we must naturally comply. Indeed, Miss Chen, times have truly changed, nowadays. Everyone speaks through their capabilities. What young Master Zheng says is absolutely right. How can this level of skill dare to claim to be the best? Even the random scribbles of a 3-year-old child in my household are more vivid than this painting. I clenched my sleeves tightly, watching them with a cold gaze. Who says a woman's brilliance lies only in calligraphy and painting? Then, someone shouted loudly. It was Jiyu Lingyun, under the astonished gazes of the crowd. He rode his horse through the moon gate, his dark cloak fluttering like the wings of a soaring eagle. Before I could speak, the man raised his hand and threw the carved bow toward me. Catch! I immediately understood his intention. Reaching out to grasp his offered hand, I swiftly swung myself onto the horse. In the moment of closeness, the man lowered his voice. The daughter of the Chen family should seek justice on horseback. I understand, if justice cannot be reclaimed. Then let's turn this place upside down. Exactly what I wanted. The bow bends like a full moon. The arrow flies like a shooting star. The first arrow is loosed. With a sharp twang like tearing silk, the high-hanging plaque inscribed 100 flowers bloom falls instantly. The second arrow pierces the green brick at Zheng Boling's feet, startling him into stumbling backward. The third arrow shot straight for the magnolia treetop, striking a cluster dead center from 100 meters away. The banquet fell completely silent, with no one daring to utter a word of dissent. Watching the scene before me, I suddenly understood the profound meaning behind Jiyu Lingyun's actions. The world says women should be confined to piles of brocade, yet forgets that the Chen family's ancestors earned their honors on horseback. Music, chess, calligraphy, and painting are but embellishments. An unyielding spirit is the true foundation of one's character. So that's how it is. What do you all think? I drew my bow and scanned the silent crowd. Was that display worthy of your attention? Frightened by such a shock, those noble ladies no longer maintained their previous haughty demeanor. They scattered in panic, some hiding under tables, others concealing themselves in bushes, each in disarray with hairpins askew. Utterly humiliated, I run my fingers over the unfaded arrow marks on the carved bow, then look at the most arrogant one among them and speak calmly. Sister, since you're so concerned about others' affairs, perhaps you should tend to your own first. I heard the 7th concubine your father recently took in was originally the top courtesan at Drunken Immortal Pavilion. If you don't intervene soon, I'm afraid it'll be you drinking the northwest wind in the future. Then, with a sidelong glance at the round-faced young lady, I add, you just called me bland. At least it's better than some people whose filthy intentions can't be concealed. No matter how fine their makeup is. Finally, his gaze fell upon Zheng Boling once more. And you, young Master Zheng, you always claim that in my past life I was vain and venomous-hearted, but your actions, indulging your cousin in publicly humiliating a defenseless girl, silently permitting them to use chastity as a weapon, how much better are you compared to my past self? The man raised his eyes, he glanced at me, then at Jiyu Lingyun behind me, whose eyes sparkled with vitality. At that moment, I actually caught a flicker of jealousy in his gaze, but I didn't care and continued to look at him coldly. You keep saying you want nothing more to do with me, so I hope you mean what you say. If we're to have no connection, then let it be truly none. Don't say one thing and do another, making yourself a laughingstock. With that, I tightened my grip on the reins, and rode away without looking back. It wasn't until we were far away from the riverside pavilion that I finally let out a long sigh of relief, as if shedding a body full of shackles. I then turned to look at the young general behind me. How did you know I was skilled at horseback archery? The first time I saw you, I noticed the calluses on your hands and guessed, after all, having fought on the battlefield for so long, how could I possibly hide it from him? I lowered my gaze to the carved bow in my hand. It was something my grandfather personally taught me when I was 10. It's just a pity it didn't align with the proper demeanor expected of a lady, so I never mentioned it in front of others. He flashed his usual smile. Did you know? The way you drew your bow just now was 1,000 times more beautiful than when they adorned themselves with flowers. So from now on, don't confine yourself to the inner chambers anymore, my lady. Smooth talker. I turned back to look at him. Seeing his spirited and triumphant demeanor, I recalled the moment when he reached out his hand just now. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. I couldn't help but say, thank you. Thank you for appearing suddenly when I was in dire straits. Thank him for telling me not to underestimate myself. And thank him for saving me from dire straits today. Jiyu Lingyun was taken aback when he suddenly called me Chen Zhaoxue. He said, come a little closer. I thought he was going to say something. So I leaned in closer, only to see the man stand up, his warm breath coming from above. The next second, he gently planted a kiss on the corner of my lips, light as a dragonfly skimming the water. "You're welcome, just give me yourself." The man relaxed his brows, a triumphant smile playing on his lips. This was the first time I had ever been so close to someone. I froze, unable to snap out of it for a long while. By the time I finally realized what had happened, there was no one left in front of me, bastard. The incident of riding a horse during the banquet quickly spread. I thought I would be punished, but unexpectedly, the Grand Princess not only didn't blame me, but also praised me for being a woman who doesn't let men surpass her. She had dreamed of galloping across the battlefield since childhood, but unfortunately, being born into the royal family, she was confined to the palace for most of her life, never able to fulfill her wish, so naturally, she adored my way of doing things. "It's a pity I wasn't at the banquet then, allowing others to humiliate you. That was my fault." The woman held my hand, chatting happily with me. We only had a few topics between us, and as we talked, the conversation suddenly turned to Zheng Bowling. "I know a thing or two about the real reason he broke off the engagement with you," the princess said. "That's really a bit too much. Do you think it's possible? He might have some unspeakable difficulties but finds it hard to bring them up, so he deliberately made up such a lie. You..." She paused for a moment, didn't look into it further. This starting point is indeed novel, but I remained unmoved. Still, I shook my head firmly. It doesn't matter anymore. No matter what unspeakable difficulties he might have, as long as he proposed to break off the engagement, there's no possibility left between us. Moreover, they went on to do such things afterward. Not having the intent to kill is already considered my magnanimity. Seeing my firm stance, she stopped saying anything further, and later, as if to confirm the princess's speculations, some inexplicable people began appearing around me. For example, the young girl I casually saved from harassment turned out to be a personal maid of the Zheng household. To repay the life-saving favor, she wanted to tell me the truth. She said their young master often calls out my name in his sleep. Zheng Bowling holds me in his heart. As for the annulment of the engagement, it was beyond my control. As for the reason behind it, actually, it's because, I don't know, I don't want to know. I didn't listen any further. Another example is the monk I met while praying at the temple, who possessed profound knowledge of both ancient and modern times. He held my hand, tears welling up in his eyes. He said that in a past life, Zheng Bowling and I had shared a lifetime of love, but I unfortunately lost my life trying to save him. So in this reincarnated life, he was determined to prevent this tragedy from happening. We must never get married, even if it meant watching the one he loved marry someone else. He would accept it willingly, and my response to this was, I quietly moved up the wedding date with Jiyu Lingyun. There were less than 2 months left until the wedding day. To sever ties with my family, I moved to my maternal grandfather's small courtyard, 3 times in, 3 times out. Though small, it is fully equipped with everything needed. You can grow flowers, you can read books, in leisure time, you can also lie on the rocking chair under the corridor and close your eyes to rest. Whenever Jiyu Lingyun had a spare moment, he would come galloping in on his tall steed, sometimes bringing exotic trinkets from beyond the frontier, other times the latest pastries from the capital. He would go out of his way to cheer me up. The last thing he brought me was a kite he had made with his own hands. At our parting, he told me the emperor had issued an edict, ordering him and General Jiang to lead 100,000 troops to campaign against the southern barbarians. This time, it might be a long while before I can return, so, I was thinking. The man lowered his gaze to look at me, his eyes filled with an inscrutable light. Maybe we should call off this engagement first, in case before he could finish his sentence, I slapped him across the face. One more chance. I mean, he indeed changed his tone. Reverting to his previous carefree and unrestrained demeanor, I will surely return victorious from this campaign. I'll definitely win you the title of a general's wife. That's more like it. Okay, I nodded gently. I'll wait for you. Come back soon. This journey to the northern frontier was fraught with twists and turns. In the beginning, he could still send messages to me, tell me everything is fine, tell me not to worry, but then, there was no more news, for 7 days straight. When the news came again, it was from the imperial court. It was said that Jiyu Lingyun and General Jiang had split their forces when suddenly a fierce wind arose. He was ambushed, leaving no trace of his remains. At that time, I was flying a kite. Upon hearing this news, I froze for a moment. The string in my hand snapped at just the right moment. The paper kite circled around the door beam, then with a whoosh, flew up to the tree and got stuck in the branches. Bastard, even in death, you're still making me worry. I rolled up my sleeves and climbed step by step up the rough tree trunk. The bark scraped my palms painfully. I slipped a few times but managed to hold on tightly each time. Just as my hand was about to touch the kite, a sudden gust of wind came. Blow it up. The white paper kite made a turn in the air, then slid past my palm and landed on the ground, as if deliberately defying me. No fun at all. I sat on the tree branch, gazing at the distant grey sky, when suddenly tears began to fall uncontrollably. From quiet sobs to loud wails, one after another, burning the back of my hand. On the third day after the news of Jiu Lingyun's death arrived, an unexpected guest appeared at my door, Zheng Boling. When I saw him again, the man had lost all his former arrogance, holding an oil paper umbrella. He stood at the doorstep, thinner than before. He came for no other reason than to renew this marriage arrangement with me. Look, this is Zheng Boling, a person who is forever aloof and superior. Whether it's breaking off an engagement or proposing one, he speaks of such matters with such ease. He always remains within his own perspective, and the wounds and pains he inflicts upon others are not even deemed worthy of mention. I certainly paid him no heed. Just as I turned to leave, the man grabbed my wrist with a death grip. With reddened eyes, he uttered my name word by word. Chen Zhaoxue, do you know the real reason I called off the engagement? You've already had those maids and monks tell me. I spoke mockingly. But so what? What difference does it make? Even if there are countless unspeakable reasons, what's done is done. And what's wrong is wrong. Why must you humiliate yourself here? No, those were just excuses I made to win you back. He took a step closer, looked down at me for a long time, and finally spoke slowly. As for the real reason, it's because you don't love me. In our past life, we were husband and wife for 16 years, yet you never loved me for a single day. The man's eyes surged with overwhelming anguish, his tone bordering on madness. In front of me, you always played the role of the virtuous wife, so proper it was nauseating. What I wanted was the radiant and spirited Chen Zhaoxue, not the obedient and submissive Lady Zheng. I hate you. I hate that after decades together, you've never truly loved me. That's why I made up that lie. I didn't want to continue this marriage. Besides, I wanted to see how Chen Zhaoxue, always so bound by rules and propriety, would react upon learning her future would be completely different. But now I've made up my mind, he said, taking a deep breath. Even if you don't love me, I still want to marry you. I can't let you go, Zhaoxue. That day, when I saw you so radiant on horseback, I realized you had long been engraved in my heart. After all, we've already been husband and wife for a lifetime. Hearing him say these words, the smile in my heart grew even deeper. I had thought that he was simply born proud, blind to the pain of others, but now, I have come to realize, he is despicable, a thorough and utter scoundrel. All these years, to be worthy of the Zheng family, I began learning music, chess, calligraphy, and painting at the age of 7. My fingers even bled in the winter, just to avoid the harsh scolding of the teaching matrons, forcing myself to become a living puppet on strings. I once thought that by carving away my flesh and blood to fit into the mold of the Zheng family's teachings, I could earn a place for my memorial tablet in their centuries-old ancestral hall, yet I never imagined this would become the very reason he grew to despise me. How could this not break my heart? Zheng Boling. For the first time, I uttered his name in full. You deserve this. You deserve that I don't love you. You deserve to watch me marry someone else with your own eyes. You were unworthy not only of my love in my past life, but also of my marriage vow in this one. In my past life, you found me dull and tried to push me into the abyss. Now that you see my heart belongs to another, you can't wait to win me back. How could such a good thing exist in this world? I enunciated each word clearly, revealing the truth. Zheng Boling, someone like you deserves nothing. As if struck in a sore spot, the man looked at me in disbelief. He still wanted to say something more, but I stopped him. The next second, I closed the door, letting his protests be swallowed by the heavy rain. Jiu Lingyun returned on a winter day. At that time, I was wrapped in a fox fur cloak, warming myself by the fire under the corridor, when someone suddenly shouted, "Miss, look, the Southern Expedition Army is back." The teacup in my hand shattered with a clink. How could this be? He isn't. Could it be? One thought after another pounded against my mind, without a moment's hesitation. I lifted my skirt and ran out of the courtyard gate, catching sight of the black-armored general dismounting his horse in the distance. The snow crunched beneath his battle boots. The man slowly approached. Tilting his head, he called out with a smile, "Zhaoxue," a face identical to the one in my memory, like a dream. "Gu." I opened my mouth, my throat clogged with water-soaked cotton. For a moment, I couldn't speak. He removed his crimson cloak and wrapped it around me. His movements uncharacteristically gentle, not even wearing a cloak in the snow. What if you fall ill before the wedding? Before the words had fully left his mouth, the urgent sound of hoofbeats suddenly came from the gate. The golden armor of the Imperial Guards gleamed coldly in the winter light. At the forefront, a eunuch held high a bright yellow scroll, clearing his throat before slowly unfurling the parchment. An imperial decree has arrived. He took my hand, and we knelt together. Deputy General Jiu Lingyun endured humiliation in the past, infiltrated the enemy camp alone, maneuvered among fierce adversaries, obtained critical intelligence for the court, and repeatedly achieved extraordinary feats. Now, having also contributed to quelling the rebellion, he is hereby specially appointed as the great general who guards the nation. The man beside him received the imperial edict with an air of composure. How could that be? I looked at him in disbelief. The southern regions are rife with miasma. I had to feign death to lure the enemy deeper, he said, a cunning glint flashing in his eyes. So that's how it is, that so-called endurance of humiliation. I suddenly realized, could it be, no choice, once you become a spy, you're bound to endure humiliation for a few years. Still with that same carefree demeanor, a single tree cannot make a forest. Never mind, anyway, the truth is out now. He lowered his gaze, then looked at me again. This time, I didn't break my promise. Indeed, I fought to make you a general's wife. Snowflakes fell from the sky, swirling and dancing in the air. Doesn't count. Why? Because you came back after the wedding date. I shouted at him, you're the general, but I'm not your wife. Alright. He quickly put on an expression of remorse. Then let's get married tomorrow. Okay, not good. And why not? It's our wedding day. Why should you get to decide? I still refused to back down. Then you pick the date. He tilted his head to look at me, his eyes and the corners of his lips glowing with amusement. Whatever Miss Chen says goes. Alright, tomorrow.